Okay, hello everyone. My name's Keith. This is Plugged On, and so I got another ranking list here for you guys. Another TV seasons ranking list. So, since Teen Wolf has finally ended, and as I've done a couple reviews and things like that for the show on this channel, I've decided I'm going to attempt to rank every season of Teen Wolf in order from best to worst. So there's gonna be nine. Like it's gonna be from 9 to 1. Now I know what you're saying. There's 6 seasons, but seasons 3, 5, and 6 are divided in half, and they're basically the length of 2 seasons. And the plots for those seasons are also like the plot for the second half only has somewhat to do with the first half. You know, both halves only have a little bit to do together. The exception being season 5. So I'm going to do each half as their own season because it is its own storyline. So without further ado, I'm going to bust into it. So at number 9, the weakest season of Teen Wolf is season 4, and there's a lot of reasons for this. So I think primarily where my problem comes with this season is that I feel like a lot of the character storylines fall flat. What they do with Malia and her parentage is really cool. The stuff with Liam is mostly cool because he's new, but other than that, it's not really all that interesting. Again, they kind of tease the stuff of what's going to happen with Parrish, which is kind of cool, but then again, not super great. Besides Malia, about the only person who has a truly good storyline all season and consistent good storyline throughout the whole season is Derek, and he has one of the best storylines that he has in the whole show over the course of the season, and some of the best character development moments that he's had in the season. But then other than that, I feel like, especially with like Scott, Styles, Kira, and Lydia, I feel like their stories fall a little bit flat in the sense that like Scott's story is about him, coming to terms with that he's not a monster, which he kind of already knew, and that kind of seems like almost like backtrack. Styles' story is almost solely based on the financial aspect, which I'll get to. Kira has a moment. Well, Kira and Scott actually become boyfriend and girlfriend, and then she has that moment where she learns how to heal and she gets her first tail. But like that moment happens in the last episode, so it kind of falls flat. And then Lydia kind of learns about her grandmother and how her grandmother's a banshee. But so I feel those storylines fall flat, especially when you start to add that like they all kind of are the same storyline of hard times with money. And like even then, like Kira, it's like 1 or 2 moments that they mention where her parents are like, oh yeah, we're going to sell the house, we're moving, and some of them make sense. Like it would have been cool maybe if like either just Scott or Styles had this plot line, and it would have been cool, but I think because they had everybody having it, it kind of brought it down. And it's just like I feel like it's just in general character moments in this part of the season are weak. Like Kira's just there. It's part of the reason why I kind of am not as sad as some people that Arden Cho left the show, because Kira, like, she didn't do anything. She left for an episode and it didn't affect things at all. Like, she just left. She just wasn't in an episode and they wrote her off and then she came back. But like that. And my other major problem is the villains of season 4, because like they're all don't make sense in some way. I like the idea of it being Meredith and Brunsky being behind the Deadpool, but Brunsky should have been the benefactor and he's manipulating Meredith. I feel like they just flipped it around for like a twist. Having it kind of go back to Peter, I could see that being an interesting idea, but at the same time, again, I don't like the idea that it was Meredith being the benefactor, and it kind of felt hollow. Like, why, after all of this, would Peter... I know he's crazy, and that's like an easy excuse, but why would he want to kill all the Supernaturals in Beacon Hills? And then having Peter and Kate be the main villains again at the end of it, I kind of don't like. Like, I felt like if you were going to use Peter as a villain, Peter should have been Teen Wolf's Endgame. Like, he should have been the villain of the final season, if you were going to use him as a villain again. And Kate was cool, but I feel like the fact that they played her up in the end of 3B and then she played second fiddle to Peter just kind of sucked. So, season 4 is just the weakest season to me. And it's just like, all the storylines get resolved elsewhere. So like Malia's storyline with her parents, like with the Desert Wolf, doesn't get resolved until season 5. Finding out what Parrish is doesn't get resolved until season 5. Like, there's a lot of that in this season. All right, at number 8, I have season 1. And I feel like season 1 is just weak, and it's naturally a weaker season because it's the first season. They're kind of hitting their stride. And it's just like, so I'm going to talk about a couple things here, and it's going to apply to both seasons 1 and 2. So it's there. I'm not as big of a fan of the style of seasons 1 and 2. Like, the angst is so much more up in the first 2 seasons, where the relationships, instead of being something that happens like as like with the show and as sort of like as a part of the context of the show, it's one of the major points. Scott and Allison's relationship is one of the major things that happens in seasons 1 and 2. And it's like a driving force for the plot. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Also, some of the stylistic choices, like the whole werewolves bounding from their hands to their feet, I question that decision. It's a little hokey in my opinion, and some of the special effects, like, though I can see what they're going for are cool, they just kind of don't hit. It also, like, everything just seems so coincidental. Like, this just happened to happen at a lacrosse game. This happened to happen the night of the school dance. This happens to take place during this event. This happens to take place during that event. Whereas at least in later seasons, I feel like they did a better job justifying why things happen around these school events. It kind of falls flat. And it's just like, I mean, being season 1, especially for like Posey and Dylan, these were their first major acting roles. So the acting's not as good. And the stories, but it does have the plus side of the story being super simple. Like, it's the hunters versus werewolves, and it's the purest story. And so there is good things about that, and it brings it up. And I do think, like, the relationships, when they're done, are done very well, and they're done in a way that's kind of complex and not straightforward for these kinds of shows. And also, don't get me wrong, like, even though this is number 8, I do really like season 1. And I do like season 4, it's just that it's definitely the weakest in my opinion. But, number 7, I have season 2. So take all the stuff that I mentioned in season 1 right there and bring it back over, but add some of the problems that also plague season 4. Like, a lot of storylines don't get resolved until season 3, like what Lydia is, they don't find out she's a banshee until season 3. Why werewolves have different color eyes, you don't really find that out until season 3 as well. And I think it's a step up. I think Gerard is a better hunter villain than Kate was. Kate is just a deranged maniac. Gerard, like, he's deranged and he's crazy, but he has more of a plot. And I think they did good with Jackson. There was a very good Jackson storyline. I hated Jackson and Lydia in season 1, and then I still didn't like Lydia in season 2, but I started to like Jackson in season 2 because they kind of made him much more of a sympathetic character. And I thought the whole stuff with the Kanema was really interesting, and they introduce a lot of characters that become more important as time goes on. I mean, they introduce Morel, they introduce Isaac, Erica, Boyd, who all have varying levels of importance. They do introduce a good bit. Yeah, but, like, again, it's more the stylistically and the choice of plot points and stuff like that I kind of have a problem with season 2. But like I said, don't get me wrong, season 2 is not that bad of a season. Number 6, I have 6A. So the second to last season, Teen Wolf. I think the main thing that holds this season back is, the unfortunate set of circumstances involving Dylan's accident and his shooting schedule. They couldn't get him because, I mean, I'm of the opinion, which I mean, maybe somebody could ask Jeff this at some point, like, if, because they kind of, it felt like Stydia was rushed, and that it was, not that Stydia itself is rushed, but, like, getting to the moment where it happens was rushed, because they're like, we're not going to have Dylan in 6B, so it has to happen now. Like, especially towards the later half, because, like, the plot for 6A kind of picks up in the later half of the season. It's kind of a slow opening half, and then the second half is much faster. So I just feel like they kind of had to rush and get Stydia done so that it worked and that they could, because they weren't going to have Dylan. And I feel like that also hurt the plot in some ways, because there's some plot points that just never got brought up again, like why is they mentioned the Wild Hunt is stuck in Beacon Hills. How are they stuck in Beacon Hills? Why are they stuck in Beacon Hills? And you can kind of tell where ideas change, because they brought back Claudia, and Claudia is there to keep Stilinski from remembering. But if he's not the one who has the power to open the rift, why did they give him and not if Lydia has the power to open the rift? Why didn't they confuse her in some ways? Why didn't they bring back Aiden? Why didn't they, like, make her think that she was in a relationship with Scott or something, or some other character? Like, why didn't they? No, they work with her, because you can either say, oh, they did it with Lorraine and Kanan because she's a banshee, but then it's like, why not do Lydia? And if it's because, oh, Lorraine has the power to bring people back, so they gave her Caleb. It's like, okay, but then why didn't Stilinski have the power to bring people back? And it's issues like that hurt this otherwise really good season. I like 6A because it's definitely a callback and a nice send off, and again, remember is the tagline, so it's nice retrospective of everything that they've gone through, of remembering Styles and remembering all these past events and things like that. And it works, and I genuinely enjoy it. Like, I like all the angles that they go. They made Corey a better character in this season because he really wasn't one in season 5. I like Argent and Melissa. I thought that was good, even though again I question why they did it. The stuff between Noah Stilinski and Claudia is some of Lyndon Ashby's best acting stuff that he's done on the show, and it's some of his best work. But I just feel like some of the problems is merit. It's the pace is really quick, and where I feel like they could have benefited from like 2 more episodes in 6A, and it's just it's a good season that it was marred by unfortunate circumstances that I think forced them to have to rush through plot points that they wouldn't have necessarily rushed through. Okay, at number 5, I have... Am I at 5? Yeah, 5B. So 5B of Teen Wolf is discount 6B, because there's kind of like a lot of stuff where, I mean, 5B was thought to at one point be the series finale, and you can kind of tell that, like, the last season of the show, and you can kind of tell, I mean, they brought back Gerard, and he became a major player again. They brought back Deucalion, and then they brought back Crystal Reed to play Marie Jean in the flashback episode. And so you can kind of tell that, like, oh, things are gearing up to be the end. And 5A has a similar problem, but I feel like maybe that 5B was a little too long. Like, whereas I said both halves of season 6 could have probably benefited from an extra 2 episodes each, both halves of season 5 could have probably benefited from having 2 less episodes each. Like, I don't know, I just feel like you could have done some things and made it a lot smaller, or combined certain episodes together. Like, I feel like you could have done Kira's episode where she's learning from the Skinwalkers, and Malia's episode where she eventually meets up with her mother and has to decide between saving Deaton and whatnot. You could have combined those 2 episodes, I feel like, and a couple other episodes. I feel like maybe you could have even made... no, I think the Escape from Ikenhouse episode needed to be 2 episodes, but like maybe you could have had all the stuff involving the lacrosse game happen over 1 episode. I just feel like they could have condensed some stuff down. But again, I thought like bringing back all these characters was cool. I liked the subplot between Malia and her mother and the Desert Wolf. I love Deucalion. He's one of my favorite characters, so bringing him back was incredible. And I think the Beast of Gévaudan is a nice final villain to the show. Well, it was a nice like villain because it's kind of a callback to season 1, and it's very historically based. In which I think 5B falters a little bit where 5A did really well, where 5A has great storylines for the characters. The characters actually go somewhere, whereas 5B kind of doesn't really have as much, even though they're still kind of there. Like, I mean, they rescue Lydia from Iken, so that's kind of her storyline. Malia gets resolution with her mom, which is great. Styles kind of comes to terms with killing Donovan. Scott gets his pack back. And Kira doesn't really progress at all. Like, she doesn't really get better. She ends up going back to the Skinwalkers, and I know that was like the writers writing her off the show, which is a shitty thing, but I just wish maybe that I don't know, I wish maybe they would have rounded out her storyline a little bit better. And Liam's storyline doesn't really go much of anywhere in 5B, but I think 5B is fine, and I feel like 5B would have been a good end to the series. But I do love season 6, both halves of season 6. I mean, even though I had season 6A at number 6, and again, I do like all these seasons. It's actually just picking between my favorites at this point. Number 4, I'm going to put 6B. So I think 6B is the best send-off for Teen Wolf we were going to get. And I mean, it kind of comes back to the original thing of Hunters versus Werewolves, Gerard versus Scott. One of the best... not rivalries, but like best conflicts that Teen Wolf has ever had. And they brought back characters. They brought back Jackson and Ethan in a way that I felt was organic. I wish they maybe would have used Jackson and Ethan a little bit more, but it worked. They brought Derek back and they made it feel organic. And there was all kinds of characters that came back. Maybe, again, they could have used Kate a little bit more. And I just like, again, that this one up the stakes. I mean, this one is season 4 done better. Instead of it just being assassins who eventually become everybody, it's literally everybody knows about the existence of the supernatural, and just about everybody's taking up arms against them. And people know, and it's just raising the stakes so much. And I just like it. I think the series finale is one of the better episodes of the show. There's a lot of callbacks to cool stuff that happened, and I'm all for that. I'm all for the little moments where you get to tease things. And I like Scott and Malia. You know, I feel like that was a great ship. Even though I know that some people are like, it's rushed, but it's like, yeah, because not everybody can fall in love in 5 episodes, or like 5 or 6 episodes like Scott and Allison did. This was, you know, they've known each other since 3B, and now they finally gotten to this point. I felt like they did a good job of not shoving it down our throats. Like, there was maybe one moment, if that, per episode, where the two would kind of have like a coupley moment. So, and I thought that worked. I just feel like they did a lot of things better. Whereas, like, there were some sacrifices made in 6A. Like, you didn't really get any Stiles and Malia in 6A, and you didn't really get any Lydia and Parrish, whereas they kind of fixed that. Lydia and Parrish do have scenes together. And they expanded the lore, which is, I know a lot of people, it's like, I just want hunters and werewolves, and I don't want new people. But I felt like Gabe and Nolan and Monroe and all these new characters, I felt like they fit, and they worked very, very well. And I feel like adding the Anukete and introducing another Hellhound did great to expand the lore. And so I know that a lot of people don't like the last couple seasons because, you know, especially season 6 because Dylan O'Brien wasn't in it, and 5 and 6 because Tyler Hoechlin wasn't in it, and a lot of actors left the show. But I feel like they did a good job, especially with this one. Number 3 is going to probably piss a lot of people off in the sense that I have 5A, the first half of season 5. I think it is the most underrated season of Teen Wolf ever. My reasoning for thinking this. Now, granted, I will give people, and I will agree with people that maybe it's a little long in the tooth, that maybe it's a little drawn out and slow, but I feel like it works, especially for the build up to the Theo's plan, you know. And I think part of the thing that this season does really, really well is that it, every character has some kind of storyline that we've never really experienced with that character before that makes their storyline unique. You know, Scott is he's you know, questioning his own leadership, and he's losing his pack. Stiles kills somebody, and he has to kind of come to terms with the fact that, oh my god, he's killed someone. Lydia is tired of being helpless all the time, and so she's learning how to fight, and then eventually gets captured in Eichenhaus. Malia's kind of has to grapple between wanting to get her own revenge against her mother, but then also helping people. Liam's kind of going through the similar plot points that Scott went in season 1, where he's falling in love, and he's kind of stuff like that. Kira's losing control of her power. I think this is probably the best Kira storyline since 3B, in which, honestly, those are the only two good Kira storylines, in my opinion. But I just think it works. I feel like Theo is a great villain because he manipulates in a way that I think makes sense. And I know a lot of people don't like the scene between Scott and Stiles, where Scott believes Theo over Stiles, but you have to understand, like, everybody's drifting apart. Scott knows that people are keeping secrets from him, and he knows that Stiles has this capacity to kill within him, whether or not he's maybe slightly afraid that Void Stiles is still in there, or if, you know, just by Stiles' words that, like, Stiles has kind of forced him to believe that, oh, Stiles could do this. And the fact that Stiles doesn't, like, immediately be like, hey, wait, you don't know the whole story, and explain himself. I think that it's a very powerful moment, and one that people overlook as, oh my god, Scott treated Stiles terribly, and more of like this is what's happening. Everybody's keeping secrets from each other, and things are falling apart. And I really like it. I think 5A is great. And I know a lot of people don't like it because Derek wasn't in it, and Tyler Hoechlin left after season 4, and, like, Ian Bohen wasn't in it. But I think it's great because, like, I don't know where Ian would have fit in this story. I liked that it was more of a focus on the teens of Teen Wolf, and I thought Derek's story in season 4 was a good send-off. I felt like that was an appropriate place for his story to end, and so I wasn't too miffed that he left the show. And I think 5A, I think people just get angry at 5A because there's all these characters have left over the last 2 seasons, and then there's all these new characters. But I feel like they did good. Like, I liked Hayden. I thought Hayden was a nice balance to Liam as a character. Corey was a character that I didn't really understand at first, but then they kind of made him good. And then, you know, introducing, you know, the Dread Doctors were great villains, I feel like they're, you know, again, underrated villains. And yeah, I really like 5A. Number 2, another controversial decision probably. I have 3B. Now, I know people everybody loves 3B and puts 3B at number one. But hear me out. So 3B is a great Kira story. It is a great Styles story. And it's also partially a great Allison story. But other than that, in terms of story, like I like the mythology. You know, I think the focus on Styles was great, and learning about Styles' mom and what happened to her, and the focus on Styles is great. When Teen Wolf focuses on Styles as a storyline, those storylines are always good. But in my opinion, I resent it a little bit because it's always at the expense of other storylines. You know what I mean? Like 6A, it was all about Styles, so I feel like Scott's character didn't progress that much. Malia's character didn't progress that much. The only character who progressed that much in 6A was Lydia, and that was only because she's realizing that she was in love with Styles. Same kind of thing in 3B. I feel like Scott kind of took a backseat to Styles, in which, sure, that's fine, but it's like, it's his show. The show is about him. And I thought that this is the best Kira season, and it sucks that it was her introductory stuff and that the writers never really knew what to do with Kira. But that stuff was cool, and Void Styles is arguably the best villain that Teen Wolf has ever had, and the Oni is probably, again, some of the best villains that Teen Wolf has ever had, and the mythology behind it was cool, and I just have a couple of things wanting. Like, maybe Derek could have had more of a thing. I mean, I kind of resent a little bit that Cora wasn't around, in which, you know, that Adelaide Kane left after 3A, but that's fine. You know, the fact that I kind of was hoped that the storyline in the couple episodes where Scott, Allison, and Styles are greatly affected by what they did for sacrificing themselves to Nemeton, I wish that would have lasted throughout the whole season. And I liked Allison's death, but then I feel like most of Allison's character progression happened in 3A, so her death was like the only major thing that happened in her storyline in 3B besides her relationship with Isaac. And even then, like Isaac was kind of like he was just kind of there. He was Allison's love interest, and that was Isaac's place in this thing. They did do Ethan and Aiden good. I felt like their redemption arc worked very, very well, and I think that they did very, very well. And it's not anything necessarily bad about 3B. I do really like 3B. I just like 3A better. And so, as you probably guessed, my number one is season 3A of Teen Wolf. In terms of stories coming together, I don't know how anything beats 3A, because I think the Alpha Pack is a great group of villains. I think they're great because it's, again, the more traditional werewolf kind of thing, and I think Deucalion is probably the most he's the most charismatic villain that Teen Wolf's ever had, and that's why and I love Gideon Emery as an actor, so I think he did a fantastic job here. Also, the same thing with the Durak. I felt like Jennifer Blake was a great foil to those characters, and I think the best thing about this was the fact that the Alpha Pack and the Durak were so intrinsically connected, and also how Jennifer's story was so deeply connected with Derek's. I felt like it was all so good, and it worked very, very well, and I liked all of it. I liked the dynamic between, you know, the Alpha Pack and the Durak and Derek and Scott and all that. And just like every character, like just about every character, maybe with the exception of Styles because they gave him a great storyline in 3B, had like some of arguably their best storylines in the whole show. You have Scott rising to becoming an alpha. You have Allison's redemption arc after she was a villain in season 2. You have Isaac kind of stepping up and becoming more of like a helpful ally in a lot of things. You have Derek learning that power isn't everything. You have Lydia finally finding out that she's a banshee, and instead of running away from her powers and what she is, she accepts it. She accepts it, and she tries to use her powers for good. I just think so much of it is done so well. And like, again, so many storylines are resolved. You know, you find out about Derek's past, which we never really knew about before. We learn, you know, more so about how evil Gerard truly is. You know, we find out what Lydia is. I just feel like all these storylines converge so well in 3A, and I almost feel even more so than any other season, 3A would have been a fine series finale. Like 3A, 5B, and then either half of season 6 would have been great series finales. Other seasons, there kind of always is like enough left open, but I feel like 3A is that. And 3A was the first season of Teen Wolf that I got really into. Like, I was so into 3A, especially when they had teased like, oh, there's an Alpha Pack. And I just feel like it worked because it felt like there was stakes, because characters like Boyd died, Erica died. You know what I mean? There were actual stakes to some of these episodes, whereas especially when you look at the later seasons. Like, sure, Brett, Laurie, and Deucalion dying hurt in 6B, but like, I don't know, I just felt different with Boyd because Boyd was around consistently, whereas like Brett and Laurie and Deucalion were never really around consistently. So yeah, so that's my ranking. So again, I had season 4 at the bottom, and I had 3A as the best season of Teen Wolf. So let me know what you think the best seasons of Teen Wolf are down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out other videos. We have reviews, other reviews going up, other ranking lists, mostly music stuff, if that's what you're into. We have the weekly breakdown. I'd definitely recommend that if you want to find out about the news in the various worlds of movies, TV, music, and video games. But yeah, I've been Keith. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.